This is quiz number 4, and this is on chapter 5. Let's see here. So this one was about motor carriers. Trucks, well, mostly trucks. Start with question 1 right here. So question 1, what is one of the primary reasons for the growth of trucking after World War II? This is kind of just logical. It has to do with the interstate highway system that was built in the 50s. That just made it a lot easier to transport goods all around the country from area to area. We can look at some of these other answers here. Trucks became larger and faster. Not really. This is the correct answer we just mentioned right here. Uh-oh. The railroads did not pursue truck-type freight business. That's not really true either. Shippers preferred the door-to-door service, which trucks could provide. That's kind of true, but there's also other issues. But really, the most correct answer is C. And that is on, let's see here. No. That is here. Chapter 5. That was really at the beginning of the chapter right here. As the interstate system of highways developed from the 50s to 1980, which is when it was all built, most of it was built, motor carriers steadily replaced railroads as the mode of choice for transporting finished and unfinished manufactured products. So it's just steady growth because the infrastructure was able to support it. So that's kind of the logic behind that question. So question 1, the correct answer is this one. The interstate highway system was constructed, which allowed trucks to give faster service over longer distances. And there's a break point of around 800 miles where trucks are still better versus air also. I think that's in another question. So we'll talk about that later. Question 2. What is the first major division of motor carriers? This is just kind of a definition that was in the text. Right here. Types of carriers. The first major division of motor carriers is between for-hire and private. So private is kind of just run by the company that owns the trucks, and for-hire is something like, I don't know, UPS, something like that. So they're doing it as a service. Private is the company's own trucks, really just running everything. So LTL and truckload is not. That's actually a different subdivision of all that. Local and long haul, interstate and interstate. That's not really a division, I guess. I guess it is. But the correct answer is B. For hire and private is the first major division. Question 3. What is a private carrier? And that is actually what we just said. Trucking operation that hauls freight for a specific industry or company, because it's not really being hired by the public or by other companies. So that is D here. A trucking operation that hauls freight for a specific industry or company. Question 4. If costs were not a constraint, which of the following would most likely provide the quickest delivery time? So LTL is less than truckload. TL is truckload. So LTL is a consolidated, is really a consolidated shipment where a bunch of smaller batches of goods are consolidated together, and you have to wait till you have enough that you could constitute a whole truckload. Or it'll, yeah, that's basically the definition. But really LTL has, they need to collect from a lot of different locations also, so they need a lot of different hubs, but that's also another portion of this chapter, but really truckload is going to be the fastest because you pick up a full truckload and you take it from wherever that was picked up at and you deliver it to wherever it needs to go. So really the fastest is going to be truckload, which is here. And a lot of that is just outlined on another section, the following section of the chapter. Here it is. Truckload and less than truckload, and there's the definitions here that we just talked about. So it's just mostly dealing with an entire truckload or trying to collect enough to create a whole load. Question 5. What does the majority of the trucking industry consist of? This one here is small number of very large carriers. No. Service industry carriers. No. Specialized carriers such as automobile transporters. No, for sure. D. Small carriers operating 6 or fewer trucks. And this is also in the text. I believe it's page 166. Yeah, right here. So number of carriers. The motor carrier industry it's in the definition here. The motor carrier industry consists of a large number of small carriers, particularly in the truckload segment. So again, these guys go to one place, pick up an entire truckload, and then take it somewhere else. So that really avoids the problem of having to offload, coordinate, deal with all these different smaller companies, separate pallets. Really, you just pick one truckload up, and drop it off somewhere. And that's the majority of the industry, because a lot of companies deal with full truckloads of commodities, whether they're either manufacturers or resellers. They deal with full truckloads more often than not. So I'm at work, and next door to me is a church, so I hope you can't hear the guy preaching right now. Because I sure can. They put a church in an industrial warehouse complex. Yes. Question 6. A relatively small amount of capital is required to enter and this goes back to what we just talked about, the truckload industry. And that just goes because you don't really need a station or a hub as much as really just a service area or a storage area for your trucks, and you just go pick up whatever you need to, and then you drop, like I said, you drop it off somewhere. So correct answer here is truckload industry, TL. Question 7. What goods do motor carriers primarily haul? And that is also in the text. I believe it was after this section. This just shows where the numbers of carriers are located and how many. And this is, let's see here. Here it is. Market structure. When discussing the motor carrier industry, consideration must be given to the commodities hauled. Motor carrier vehicles, both for hire and private, so both modes, primarily transport manufactured high-value products. So back to the question, what goods do motor carriers primarily haul? Manufactured and commodity goods. So manufactured goods is the bulk of it, and commodity would, I guess, really constitute the rest of it. So grain is kind of part of the commodity goods, coal and ore, paper products. These are all a subdivision of the commodities. Question 8. What is not a service characteristic of the trucking industry? This kind of gets down to just definitions in the text. So that would start on page 170 here. Operating and service characteristics. So we're looking for a characteristic that is not typical. So you kind of probably want to just go back and read over this, but like we just mentioned earlier, trucks have a speed advantage for shipments less than 800 miles. That is true. That'll be in that section. You can read it. Trucks provide smoother transport over rail and water. This is also true. Truck rates are cheaper than air. That's pretty much anyone would agree with that. So really A is not really going to be listed in that section as one of the characteristics. And like I said, you can go back and read that, and it'll be a good idea to read it so you can get a better idea of the definitions of the characteristics. But the correct answer is here. Trucking companies can consolidate goods from various shippers, which result in quicker transit times. So that already is not making sense, because that's like the LTL versus TL. So this answer A is just not correct, just by definition. Question 9. LTL and TL carriers must make the same type of equipment decisions regarding weather, not really, amount of travel on paved or unpaved roadways, not so much, forklift and dock compatibility, not so much, but their primary similarity in equipment is the types of tractors and trailers. This is also in the text in the following section here. In equipment, page 171. And it is right here. TL and LTL carriers need to make two types of equipment decisions. Types of tractors and types of trailers, and this paragraph and the following section kind of define what that's all about. So you can just read that really quick. I think you'll remember it if you read it rather than listening to me. So just go ahead and take a look at that. Question 10. Which agency within the DOT governs specifications of trucks, such as lights, tires, and other parts? That is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And that is, this NHTSA actually deals with cars a little bit more, and you probably heard about them a lot during that Toyota ruckus a few years ago. They're the ones that investigated all that. But that's a little more towards vehicles. And for our particular question, types of vehicles, right here. Department of Transportation's Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration established many rules governing motor carriers. So here is where that answer is. Page 173. For number 10. Question 11. The decision as to terminal location is important for one of these two, TL or LTL. It's actually LTL because they need to service different customers. They need to consolidate loads. They need to move loads from one place to another. So their actual network of terminals is very important. It's definitely not simple, so answer D is not correct. C is generally decided on by metropolitan population. Maybe a little bit, but not necessarily. It's really because you may have a manufacturing location that's not necessarily having anything to do with metropolitan population. If you are an end delivery company like UPS or something, this could come into play more. But in general, the correct answer is going to be A, more than any of these others. And B, you really don't have a terminal, or it's not as important because again, you're picking up one place, dropping off in another, an entire truckload. And the information for this is on, let's see, page 179. Right here, locations of terminals. So page 179. There's a little more explanation there, but I think what we just mentioned is pretty much all of it. Question 12. There are several types of truck terminals. Which one is not part of the ones used by LTL carriers? These are just defined in the text. I think it starts on page 173, actually. We'll go back a little bit here. And they're just listed, the types of terminals. Here we go, terminals, yeah, page 173. The types of terminals are listed here. Pickup and delivery is one. Break bulk is another type. I think relay terminals is another type here. The description is there. You can take a look. So fuel terminals was, let me see. Fuel terminals was not one that's listed. So this is the one that is not the types. So A, C, and D are the types used. Question 13. What is the largest single expense item for trucking firms? There's a little diagram in the text. Let's see here. There was a truck. Where is it? Here, right here. Page 180. So this is a very good breakdown. It illustrates everything here. So this kind of shows the cents per mile that it costs to operate the truck. And as you can see, the biggest bulk is driver wages. So these other items just aren't as significant as the driver wages. And that is right here. So that's the correct answer here. Question 14. According to the textbook, it appears that there are, and in the book we'll go look at it, but this is just a definition, no major economies of scale in the trucking industry. And this is just interesting, but it just shows that as you get larger, you really don't have an advantage. And I guess it's really just, here it is, page 182, economies of scale. So it really just shows that in this particular industry, the larger you get, it doesn't really help you too much. I guess really because things are kind of spread out. And this allows smaller companies to come in and compete, which is, as we said in an earlier question, the bulk of the industry. So I think just the fact that the bulk of the industry consists of truckloads and that you don't need a lot of infrastructure to support that, it just starts coming down to competitive pricing. And larger companies have larger overhead, so it kind of evens the playing field, and then the smaller guys actually have a competitive advantage sometimes. So For question 14, no major economies of scale are really there for this trucking industry. Question 15, where does funding for highways come from? And this is from highway user taxes, not from these other ones. They're not really related to highway funding. And that is also in the text, 180, somewhere. Yeah, in this section it kind of describes highway user taxes right here. So you can read that, but it's kind of a logical basic definition that's where this funding comes from. So that's kind of a straightforward question. Question 16. The Federal Highway Trust Fund pays for what percentage of construction cost on the interstate highway system? This is 90%. Not 100%, but 90%. And this is, I believe it was in a following section here. So we're on page 184. Funding, 184, funding, highway funding. Here it is right here. The Federal Highway Trust Fund, the federal government pays 90% of the construction costs and 50% of the construction costs for all other roads. So 90% for the interstate system, as listed right here. 90% of the interstate system costs are funded by them. Not 100, definitely not 25, and definitely not none. So this is by far the most appropriate answer. Question 17. What type of trailer can be safely hooked together in 2s and 3s? This actually goes back to another section. I might be, hold on here. I wrote it down. 167, page 167. I think there's a little illustration. Here it is. So page 167, I thought there was a drawing, but I think that's in another section of the chapter. This talks about 28-foot, 48-foot, or 53-foot trailers. So the typical one you're going to see the most on a single is a 48-foot. They use 53s also, but 48 is the most common you're probably going to see on the road. If 28-foot trailers are used, they're hooked together in 2s and 3s. A lot of an interesting side note is a lot of the 53-foot trailers you'll see nowadays on the road, you'll see they're actually built from 48s. You'll see like a weld mark where they were added on, and they added on an extra 5 feet on the back. So when you're driving, take a look at the long trucks, especially the container ones, and you'll see a lot of times they're welded on, and it might even be a different color. They didn't even bother to paint it. They just welded it on. But you'll see a little extra 5-foot section on the back. But 48 is usually typical for what you might see on at the port also. 53 is a little more common for road transport. Yeah, take a look next time when you see trucks. You'll start to notice it, that the really long ones are 53 and a lot of them are modified 48s. But yeah, if you start having multiples, you'll have 28. And we'll go to the second extra credit question here. Are triple truck trailers legal in California? No. I hope you've never seen one in California because they're just not allowed. Usually you'll see them in areas that have a lot more rural area, like the Midwest. Utah, I think Utah allows them only in the flat areas, not the hilly areas. And that's the issue, is they're dangerous on hills. You don't have control over the whole chain of trailers that you have, and especially hills, not going uphill but downhill is actually very, very dangerous for trailers and trucks with trailers. So that's some advice too. If you're ever towing something of significant weight, be very careful on the downhill, because suddenly you'll start building up speed, and if you hit the brakes a little bit weird, you're going to jackknife and you're going to be in big trouble. So, extra credit question: triple truck trailers legal in California? No. The first extra credit question: what model year trucks were banned in what years under the Port of Los Angeles Clean Truck Program? So this program really was phasing in of later model year or cleaner trucks in the port. So they started doing it in phases, and this is the LA Port site, and they have a lot of information just publicly available here. And on this particular page, if you searched and found it right here, it shows a progressive ban on polluting trucks. So October 1, 2008, pre-89 trucks banned. January 1, 2010, up to 1993 model year trucks banned. 94 to 03, they had to be retrofitted trucks, so they had a inspection and certification program. And just last year, 2012, there's this 2007 standard. Those had to be met. So this was the full answer for full credit right here. Some of you put some answers. I gave partial credit. I was pretty generous with partial credit. But this is the full answer right here. And that is, I believe, all of quiz 4, chapter 5.